All right, folks. Well, we are at the end for our final panel. And for those of you who have been with us for a while, I hope that you've thoroughly enjoyed this experience. We've had some fantastic panelists and a lot of great insights, lessons learned from the industry. And so I'm going to say for this panel, we saved the best for last. And I'm not supposed to have a favorite panel, but I'm saying that, and obviously I've enjoyed all the panel, but a number of these folks on this particular panel have gone back with me a ways, and they've been involved in multiple projects that I put on. And so I'm always happy to have these folks involved. So I'm definitely excited to see what they have to share as we wrap up our conference. And so let's go ahead and jump into the introductions. And so first of all, we have Annie Merovich, who's a senior manager of game presentation and events for the Ontario Reign. Annie, welcome and good to see you again. Carly Peterson Loft, who's a premium sales manager for the Rose Bowl. Carly, you on by any chance? Okay, she hopefully will join us shortly. Celeste Gehring, who's the owner of Visionary Building. Celeste, are you on?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, hi Celeste.
Hi.
And then Joey Buskirk is a senior manager for club media strategy for the National Football League. Joey, good to see you again, and thank you for joining us. And then Lauren Nickle, who's an account executive for Major League Baseball. Lauren, welcome, and thanks again for your continued support. And then Nadia Kim, she's the manager of integrated brand marketing for Fox Sports. And Nadia was with us last year's conference. Good to see you again, Nadia. And then we have Ryan Koerner, who's an account executive for partnership sales for the Los Angeles Dodgers. Ryan, are you on by any chance? Whoops, my apologies, you guys. I'm sorry. Somehow we went back.
Ron, I'm here.
No, Ryan, my apologies. Los Angeles Rams. I'm sorry, not Dodgers, but thank you, Ryan. Thank you. Good to see you again. And then finally, Sergio Millas, who's the vice president of digital media for HallPass Media. Sergio, welcome and good to see you as well.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's like a homecoming here. So
it is, yeah.
All right, so folks, I'm sorry. I'm getting a little clumsy here and moving these slides forward. So this lessons from the sports arena. And so as we know, getting into sports is hard, can be tough, and then sometimes working in the industry can be very challenging. And I know all of you have had quite a bit of experience in the industry. You've had your fair share of successes as well as maybe obstacles you've had to work through. And so this panel is about sharing lessons that are going to hopefully help the next generation to navigate into the industry. And once they're in there, to really navigate the way so that they could be as successful as they possibly can be. And so just wanted to start off by asking you all, if you had to characterize your career in a few words, how would you characterize your career journey in sports so far? And anyone could jump in and start.
Well, I don't mind starting. I think I'm sure you've heard it many times, right? Sports, you're going to have to sacrifice. You're going to have to work hard. And if you want to be able to get to your dream job, you're going to have to be flexible. And that means maybe not starting where you want to be. Like my favorite sport was hockey, but I didn't start in hockey. I started, by volunteering and running teleprompters for TV stations and at TV and event shoots. And then, helping volunteer for soccer and then, doing their pre-game celebrations. And then once in a while I'd work for Fox Sports World. So you're not going to start where you're going to finish. And that's one of my favorite things is, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. One of my professors told me that, and I love sharing that because I think that's so true. And when I got my big break in baseball is where I started, and then eventually got into hockey, which I love, and I'm really happy to be here now, but that's not where I started. So, but it takes, the sacrifice, giving up the holidays, giving up the weekends, and the hard work to continue to grow, develop, learn about your craft, talk to others, in your industry, so you can continue to learn from them as well, because it's a very small group, and chances are what you're going through, someone has gone through already, and you can truly learn from them. So mentors as well are really huge. So I think those are all really important, and don't be glued to your city. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I went to Cleveland, Ohio to get into baseball, and now I'm out here in Ontario, California, an hour away from LA. So don't be glued to where you are, because you can always go back, but there aren't a ton of opportunities as you continue in the industry. So take advantage when something presents itself and be willing to move to get what you want.
Terrific. Great way to start us off, Annie. So you said quite a few different things, but it's important for students just to be reminded of that the sacrifice that goes into a career in the industry like sports. And of course, what you said to not, you're not going to start where you finish. And oftentimes we get locked into that first job and that dream job, but it's okay to start elsewhere. And eventually you'll make your way into your dream job if necessary. So good stuff. And I'll recap. I'll come back to some of the other things you shared too. So who else wants to jump in and just share maybe a few words that they feel will characterize their career journey in sports?
I can jump in. And you're going to have to excuse me. I lost my voice, but wanted to make sure to show up for the students here. And so,
Sergio, I just want to just take a moment to thank you for that. Sergio sent me a note just to warn me about this, but he was really committed. And students, just real quick, I've talked all day just about how fortunate you are to have professionals like this who will come in, and professionals that you normally would have to pay to hear speak, but you're getting it for free. But Sergio, obviously he has a life, he has his health, but he really wanted to be here for you. And, and so Sergio, I just want to honor that and thank you for showing up.
Absolutely. I appreciate you saying that, but it's an honor to be here. But yeah, the word that I would use is entrepreneurial, and look, we all know the big companies in sports, right? Like I see some of my fellow panelists working for some huge companies out there, but there's a lot of small companies out there that need help, right? So similar to what I heard Annie say, that your first job's not going to be your last job, right? Don't be afraid to look at small companies, right? And the story that I like to tell, when I got started in my career, my last internship while I was at USC was at Wasserman Media Group, a giant company. They offered me a position, and the director of marketing for WMG at the time, he decided to leave and start his own company, right? And so one of the things that I did is take a leap of faith, because I wanted to be a big fish in a small pond and see how I could contribute to the company, right? So I'll speak to this a little bit more later, but my career has been very entrepreneurial. I've worn a lot of different hats, and just know that that is an avenue as a way into the business, right? You don't have to work for a major team. You don't have to work for a major agency or broadcast network. There's a lot of different opportunities out there, and worth exploring. And a lot of times working for smaller companies, you can learn a lot more faster, right? Which I think is, one of the keys to success, right? Is continuing to grow and continuing to learn.
Terrific stuff, Sergio. Thank you for sharing that. All right, who else wants to chime in? A few words to characterize your career so far.
I think for me, it's really been a masterclass in life. As a former collegiate athlete, I played basketball at LSU. And, when you love the game and you play the game, you want to stay close to all the values that athletes have, like being close to family, working hard, being driven. And I feel like sports has really helped me reach my potential in that way, because a lot of people who do work in sports have had a background in sports. And so you're around family-oriented people that have high values and are very driven.
Terrific. Thank you, Celeste. And I just want to say too, Celeste, all these folks, obviously I could say so much in terms of their allyship, to students who want to get into the industry, but Celeste is a big cheerleader for students, and she's well networked, too. And so she's definitely someone that you may want to stay in touch, as well as the others too. So I just want to put a little shout out, plug up for Celeste. All right, who else wants to chime in? A few words to characterize your sports career. If not, we can move on, because I want this to be a forced question. So we can move on if no one else has anything they want to chime, because we have plenty of other questions. Okay, fair enough. So let's get to the heart of it. So this panel is all about sharing lessons, sharing stories. And so I want to ask you all if you could share maybe one or two key lessons learned. And I know there's so many different things you've learned, but maybe you can boil it down to maybe one or two of the most important lessons you learned so far from your career in sports.
I'll go ahead and jump on that one. I would say, don't be afraid to fail. Like, so much of what you're taught in school is like, do things this way, do things that way. But when I first started in sports, I kind of got paralyzed by, what am I supposed to do? What's the right way to do things? And more often than not, just taking on problems that weren't otherwise being met, or willing to help on something that someone else didn't want to do is what really got my foot in the door on a lot of opportunities in the sports industry. More often than not, people just need help and need someone who's going to be a doer and do things. And I think that's something that could really benefit all of you as you guys are getting your career started in sports.
Terrific, Lauren. Thank you. So don't be afraid to fail. And then, yeah, I really appreciate that. Taking on problems, taking on issues, because I tell students, that employers are hiring problem solvers, and so just being willing to take on those tough challenges that other people are willing to take, and you stand out. So thank you for sharing that, Lauren.
I can jump in here too. A couple lessons working in sports specifically. My mom, she always told me that life is all about relationships. And I found that that's true in the workforce as well. Building relationships, making sure that you're checking in with whether you have clients or just your normal colleagues, checking in on them, building friendships at work. It's so important for not only your well-being but also your advancement and your career, because obviously everybody has a different scope of what their day-to-day looks like, but if you're not integrating building your human-to-human interactions and relationships, then you're not going to go too far in my experience. So that's one. Another one is listening. And I would say that listening is just as important as giving your opinion and giving your 2 cents. I think that maybe some of you can relate, but I have worked with many people over the years that are not good listeners, and it makes it incredibly difficult to work with them. So I think that especially when you're new and you're young and you're hungry, a lot of times your first initial reaction will be to speak, and obviously don't want to hinder you from doing that. Of course, it's important, but taking it in, listening all throughout your career is incredibly important. The last thing that just popped into my mind that doesn't have as much to do with work, but makes you a better employee, is making time for your well-being and your mental health. And I know that a lot of us have gone through different things. I spoke on here in April about a personal journey that I had that I don't know if I'll get into this time, because that was I was moved to back then to speak, but really taking care of yourself so that you could be the best person you can be at work is incredibly important. Like passions, interests, whatever that looks like for you is incredibly important. And that's easy for me because I grew up with so many activities and so many things that my family and my parents and brother and sister taught me and showed me the importance of. So I just really encourage everybody that for as much of a grind it is to work in sports, because it is, it's just as important to balance that with taking care of yourself.
Thank you, Joey. And I always appreciate encouragement about well-being, mental well-being and mental health too. And it's always been important, but I'm so glad that there's more of a spotlight on it and more people are speaking about it. And yeah, as you mentioned, there's situations and their jobs, where you're grinding and there's so much going on. So you got to take care of yourself, and also appreciated listening to. One of our panelists mentioned earlier something that we've heard, before. She was told by her grandmother that you got 2 ears and 1 mouth. So listening's obviously underrated, but very important. All right, anybody else want to chime in on some key lessons learned in your sports career?
I'll add another one. One thing I would say is take advantage of opportunities, make opportunities for yourself. When I was early in my career, I would reach out to the local sports teams, to everyone in the area, and just say, I'm a student, I'm just looking to shadow your production for a day, just to learn from you. And I've also had people who've reached out to me just asking to shadow. And I know during COVID, things were a little different. Obviously, we were shut down a little bit more, but we've opened back up to things like that. So know that those opportunities are there. You just need to ask. And a lot of times we can make things happen. And it's a great way to just kind of learn if that's really what you want to do. Maybe you're not sure. Maybe you're trying to find your path. Even just talking to someone to see, is this the route you really want to go? I think that's really important. So, and even early in my career, and I still do it now, I would be like, hey, I'd like to come to your game. I'm going to be in the area. Can I check out your production? Can I talk to you? All that stuff, because it's how you grow. You learn from each other. You can, get ideas, all of that. And I think that's really important. No one told me, hey, go reach out to the teams and see if you can shadow. I just did. And I eventually met my future boss by doing that exact thing. That's one of the reasons I came out here to LA. I had met that person, and it's cool when you go somewhere and you already know that person who's going to end up being your boss. So I think take advantage of opportunities. They're there. Most people will at least talk to you because we know it's a tough industry. We know you got to fight for it, but you're already putting yourself one step ahead. Just like being on this, you're putting yourself one step ahead. Take advantage. Reach out on LinkedIn, but have that invitation. Say, I saw you on this, when you talked for this sports industry talent incubator. Don't just send that LinkedIn because we don't know who you are otherwise, but say, I was on there, enjoyed hearing you speak, things like that. You've made that connection already, and you're showing you're taking that step ahead. So take advantage of it.
Thank you, Annie. And we hear that, but you can't state it enough about taking advantage, because there's so many opportunities around this. It's a matter of looking, and as you're taking advantage of it. And also, like the way you phrased it too, making opportunities, because sometimes the door is closed, but what can you do to create an opportunity for yourself? And I think we need to hear that as well. So great. Anybody else want to chime in on any key lessons before we move on? Okay, well, the next question, actually, let me just recap before we move on. So just going back, obviously, don't be afraid to fail, take on problems that others aren't willing to tackle, relationships, so building a relationship, but also checking in to maintain, also friendships at work, great for your well-being as well as career advancement, listening, making time for your mental health and well-being, and then taking advantage of opportunities. So great stuff. All right, so the next question is sort of a fun question. And I think after this question, I will open the floor up for questions from students, and then we'll get back to some other questions I'm gonna have for the panel. So we'll ask our panelists to kind of go back to their 19 to 20-year-old selves and how you were. And so if you had to meet that person and give them some words of advice about how to start their career, what would you share with your 19 to 20-year-old self?
I'm happy to jump in here. I love this question because I don't know if anyone else maybe on this panel or listening in might relate. When I was a student at USC, I was actually a political science and international relations major. So I stumbled into sports kind of at random. I literally cold applied to a job at AEG, which is where I got my start. Hello to Annie from the Ontario Reign, but people think that, sports is just networking. You have to know someone to get your foot in the door somewhere. And I just want to say I was a cold apply kind of success story. So you guys are already one step ahead, being somewhere like this panel where you're meeting people who are actually in the industry. So obviously being that 19, 20-year-old who thought I would work for the CIA or the government one day, that's kind of the big thing I would tell them. I think my 19-year-old self would not quite believe where I'm at now. But the biggest thing really is, we've had a couple panelists really touch on this industry. The easiest way to get in is networking and meeting people and coming to these things. How I got my big foot in the sports when I joined the NFL was through an organization called Women in Sports and Events that runs a lot of different chapters and events in different cities, big cities. So college students, that's my first recommendation to them. That's where I got my foot in the door at the NFL, where I worked with great people like Joey. And through that job, I learned everything I needed to learn to then have a stint with NBC Universal and now currently with Fox Sports. So you just need that one foot in the door, but don't let it intimidate you if you feel like you're behind, if you feel like you haven't gone to internships, you haven't made the connections, etc. It's never too late to start. I literally started at 23 years old. And it never, if you're even a little bit later on, even then, people will switch all the time. But that's really the biggest thing you can do is have the tools, get that start right now, let this be your motivator, and reach out to all of us after this.
Terrific, Nadia. Thank you for sharing that. All right, who else wants to chime in? If you had a chance to speak to your younger self, what would you say to that person?
Ron, I'll jump in here if anyone else wanted to chime in too. I think what Nadia was saying just now and earlier, Annie, I know Annie and I have been on a few of these, so it's good to hear the same messaging recommunicated time and time again. For when you're outside trying to get in, get uncomfortable being uncomfortable, whether that's trying to set up, hey, like I just want to pick your brain for 15, 20 minutes, whether it's over the phone, whether it's taking the time to drive out of town or drive to their offices. Like, don't be don't be someone that's sitting outside of Park Avenue in New York, like just with a resume looking to talk to anyone that's walking out of the NFL offices. Like, find creative and unique ways to leave an impression. Like, I can't say how often I remember students from these groups, to what Annie and Nadia were saying, like, reach out to us, but also take something away from this that will stick with you. So in 3 to 4 weeks time, when you're reaching back out to us, like, if there's one thing that resonated with you from something, whether it's I said or another panelist, like, that should be what you follow up with, because it's showing us that, one, you're generally interested, but two, like, there's already that underlying passion to get into this industry, which is so huge. And that's a perfect segue for what I wish I could have told myself. Once you're inside, like, the sports world really is, when it starts, is at the foundation, whether it's sales or marketing. Like, it's the entry level job that everyone's fighting for, that everyone's trying to get through as quickly as possible. I wish my younger self was in this currently, because he would hear me say, don't scoreboard watch. I think, especially coming from a seller side, in my career, the biggest thing you don't want to do is focus on what other people are doing, right? I know that's how a competitive sports environment usually lives, and that's what we've been raised and grow up with. But the biggest opponent you're going to run into early on in your career, whether it's trying to get into the industry or once you're in the industry, is yourself. So just keep that in the back of your mind. If and when some of you juniors or seniors are getting some inside sales roles or entry-level marketing positions, don't compete against yourself, because once you start to do that, it's a tough slope for you to then continually climb up the ladder within our industry. So those would be the two takeaways that I wish the younger version of me heard today, but maybe more so some 10 years ago.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate that. And I love that. Don't scoreboard watch. And there's a quotation that said something to the effect that comparison is the thief of joy, or something to that effect too. And so, yeah, you got to focus on you and what you need to do. So great stuff. Anybody else want to chime in on the conversation with their younger self, what they would say?
Yeah, I have 3 quick ones. I think, the first thing is really do you, right? As a lot of hiring managers are on this call, we are looking for you to be part of a team. It doesn't mean we want anybody who's like somebody else. We want you. So do you, like when you pitch yourself, you do the elevator pitch, you're networking, be who you are. Don't be who you think someone's looking for. Do you. Second thing is, start with who you know and watch it grow. So start with your college professors, start with people you know. Don't always try to talk to the hiring manager. Talk to entry level, alumni that's working at a network or working at a league, and then connect to the next person, and then ask that person for a name to connect to, and just keep that chain going. That's how you're going to really build your network, right? Get those LinkedIn numbers to at least 500 connections that you have to really increase your odds of being seen. And that ties in with my last one, is being present. One of the things I love to do on all of Ron's things that he has is I love to scroll through and see which students are present and on screen, right? Like, who wants to be seen, right? And really being present and wanting to be seen is part of when you get an opportunity. So I like to scroll through and kind of see like, oh, who's really on the screen, who's really dialed in, and who's present. Because, with what we do, like, Valley Sports and television and all of that, we want people that are driven and ready to go. And that's one key indicator. So just being present to get your opportunities and possibilities, I think, is crucial.
Great stuff, Celeste, as usual. And you never know when you're being watched. So I think you can say that too. Yeah, so you always got to be prepared to show up. And one of our panelists made a comment earlier, just in terms of even casual conversations, but just being interviewed. You never know when you're being interviewed, too. So great stuff. All right. So maybe as a recap, obviously we heard, about networking, being comfortable with being uncomfortable, and finding, as Ryan mentioned, creative, unique ways to leave an impression. And yeah, you got to use your imagination, because it is very competitive. Don't scoreboard watch, and then do you. Start with who you know, and yeah, it's more important. Whether it's family members, mentors, professors, people, fellow interns, students. start with those folks to get connected to who you want to get connected to, and then obviously being present and showing up and being visible. So terrific. All right. At this point, let me shift gears. Let's see if we can take some questions from our students. And so students, once again, you can raise your hand, you can put a question in the chat. Okay, we got a couple hands raised pretty quickly. So panelists, you've actually striking some nerves here. So John Vani, why don't you go ahead and ask your question?
Hi, yeah. How you guys doing? So I just had the main question. So I currently go to Fresno State and I'm studying sports marketing. So for trying to get internships, in these big cities like sports cities such as San Francisco or Los Angeles, the distance might be a little issue for me. When it comes to summer internships, what would you guys say would be a good thing to do, say for like these 8-week-long internships at a time with living wise?
I'd say check your minor leagues. There's a lot that the minor leagues look for, and I know there's teams in Fresno. So keep your eyes out, keep your nose to the grindstone with that stuff, and look early. Like knowing you're looking for summer, you should be looking now. Knowing that they're going to be looking for people, but minor leagues are a great way. And obviously, I'm going to toot that my own horn a little bit because I'm in the minor leagues, but it's a great way to kind of learn the whole business. And they're always looking for more help. So even if it's a case where you're, stage managing for a team, you're going to get to learn all about the different aspects of it. So just keep that in mind, keep your eyes and ears open for anything, teamwork, look everywhere, because there are teams everywhere. There are colleges who will be looking for things like that for sports marketing, all that stuff too. So it doesn't matter. There are opportunities everywhere. It doesn't matter if you're in a big city, a little city there. And also, like was mentioned earlier, look at regular companies too, because they're looking for marketing as well. So you can learn a lot from local marketing and apply that in the sports world later on. So you don't have to stay necessarily in sports in that sense too. So just look everywhere where there's opportunities and apply. And you may not know everything, but that's okay because they're there to teach you. So always know that too. Don't limit yourself. If you go, oh, I don't necessarily know that, take a shot, see what they say.
Thank you, Annie. Appreciate that. And Alexander, how about you?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, you sure can.
So I hear a lot about, internships and how it has to kind of tie into being in school, right? So I'm not currently in school and I did not get my degree. So one thing I want to ask is what would be a good way for me to initiate myself and start finding one of these internship positions or any type of position in the sports world so I can get more of that exposure?
I can take that one. If there's a specific region, team, or area that you want to work, Alexander, it doesn't have to be the entry job that, let's say, you feel is the one that you want to go after. Like I think of some of the major league teams that I've worked for, and I'm sure it can be said for college athletic departments, and it can definitely be said for minor league baseball or minor league teams, AHL, you name it. People have crazy career paths. Like someone can start in the mailroom and end up being on the C executive floor or being the CRO or CEO. So it's similar to what Annie was saying earlier. I mean, funny enough, the destination doesn't matter. It's the journey and how you get there, right? So don't necessarily look at it as I don't have any college internship experience, yet alone having a college degree. Like that doesn't necessarily matter. I think a lot more of the hiring managers on this call or managers that you'll be connecting with in the future, they more so want to understand you and maybe peel back some layers around, well, why didn't we do this? Why didn't we do that? If you're able to give an honest and upfront answer as to why that makes sense to your unique story, you're probably going to have people being like, okay, great. He maybe doesn't have all of the experience we're looking for, but he has the passion. He has the character. He has the relationship skills to where we can plug and place him anywhere within our company's organizational chart. And guess what? You might have an internship for 8 weeks, and then let's say a seasonal ticketing role or a seasonal marketing role opens up and no one's applied, but someone's like, hey, you know what? I think you'd be great for that. Like I believe Celeste was saying it earlier. it's opening these doors once you get your foot or feet inside. And again, to what you asked earlier, I personally, and I could be wrong here, I don't think it matters where you start, whether it's mailroom, assistant, like finding your way in is the hardest part about getting into our industry. So once you find that and navigate your way in, you're already well ahead of where you felt or thought you could one day be, having the position of where you specifically are in. So I hope that helps.
It was. I appreciate it.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Ryan.
just to touch on what Ryan said, I'm not so sure, like you said, like what school you went to, how many internships you did, like that used to matter, I think. At this point, it's really just about what it is you're capable of, right? And finding good ways to kind of show your work, display what you're capable of it's at least front and center for me, right? So I get thousands and thousands of resumes every single year at this point. And I don't really care what school they went to, what their GPA was. It's really more so, how can this person contribute to the team immediately, right? And I always like to tell young people, if you can learn to solve people's problems or to help, the executives that are hiring deal with some sort of a pain point they have, you'll always have a seat at the table, right? And like I'm looking at your video here. It looks like you got a podcast mic. Just find different ways to show your work, right? For everybody listening, you don't necessarily need an internship to display what it is you're capable of, right? It's a web, social media, whatever it might be, right? You have the ability to create like the online properties to be able to show what it is you're capable of and how you think. And on the flip side, for those of you that are in school, which I think it's most people on this call, right? Even if you don't have an internship, take advantage of the school projects that you have put in front of you, right? I mean, there's no reason why the finance project, the marketing project, the accounting project, that they can't all be centered around some sort of topic around sports, right? So my point is that there's really a lot of different ways to create opportunities for yourself and to be able to display to different hiring managers what it is you're capable of.
Great stuff, Sergio. Thank you very much for that. And Ryan, thank you also as well.
I think, and Sergio's hitting a point that I feel like a lot of you probably are seeing others do. So, copy and paste it. A lot of like, if you look at who everyone works for example, currently, there's a lot of new digital and social innovations that are coming to the forefront of sports that some of us that have worked in sports for 10, 15, 20, 25 plus years, we're not used to seeing. Like the example I'll jokingly bring up here is TikTok. Like, look at how well TikTok's done in 2 years' time, integrating itself into Gen Z. And now it's starting to work in sports, whether it's from a partnerships perspective, marketing, earned media. I think it was a question earlier in this conference or earlier here in this last 15, 20 minutes where it's like, how can I stand out? Like, go down those paths, like come up with creative ideas or take steps into, let's say, where the future of minor league baseball or the NHL or media is going, because then again, you're setting yourself apart being like, I actually have knowledge on TikTok or Web3 or all of these different new platforms that 5 years from now are going to be center focused within the NFL, Fox Sports, any specific venue here in Los Angeles, but also too anywhere in the country.
Great stuff, Ryan. And that's just a good reminder too for folks to take what they know and to be able to add value that way. So Alexander Mendoza, I think you had your hand raised.
Yes. So my question to the panel was, did you learn anything from where you started that you use now, and how did you use that experience to kind of build your resume or learn from interviews or to move up within the industry?
For me, it was always asking why, right? And being curious. Just like I'm a super curious person. And I think people that do well in any job, right? They're naturally curious people and they want to know why, they want to know how, they want to know what makes people tick it. Like, why do we do things a certain way? Can we do it better? So that's always helped me throughout my whole entire career, is just being a naturally curious person. And the other thing that really helped me too is really thinking about what people's intentions are. Like, so many times, like, you know, we're in the industry, or we're competitive, or we want something, right? And just understand, you know, not taking things so personal. For example, you know, everybody has limited time and energy. All of you have limited time and energy. Hiring managers have limited time and energy. So sometimes maybe somebody's not getting back to you about a job, or not getting back to you right away. And it's not their intention to ignore you, or it's not their intention that you're not good enough or you don't have what it takes. It's just they're human, right? And they're working on things too. So just thinking about intention was a thing that's always really helped me throughout my career.
Good stuff, Celeste. Thank you. All right, I think Jacob Glenn, you got a question? Jacob, you still there? Did you still have a question to ask?
Yes, sorry.
No worries.
I was hoping to ask Mr. Koerner a question for the Rams. I was gonna ask as somebody that's like very interested in entering the sales department, how overwhelming is it at first once you are in the field? Because I know sales can be like a high stress environment. And B, what would you say are the best strategies in dealing with that, you know, high pressure environment, and you know, looking for some sort of like type of mentors to you know, help give you a little bit of guidance in that field?
I would love it if other panelists chimed in on this too, because I feel I'm not the only one with that experience. But to answer the questions, Jacob, those were great. Try to hit as many as I can. I know I said it earlier, don't scoreboard watch. I think the best thing for anyone that's, let's say, getting the opportunity to work within a sports team on the sales cycle or on the sales floor, so to speak, is you're going to get no 10 to 20 times more than you're going to get yes. So it's going from one call to the next, or one day or 1 week or 1 month to the next, and being able to be like, okay, Gay, you know what? Didn't have the best day with people reaching back out or getting responses, but don't let that deter you from the passion that you have. Like, you're probably excited or really encouraged every single day when you walk through the doors of the Ontario Reign, of Major League Baseball, of the Rams, wherever and whomever it may be. Remember those reasons as to why you were so excited about working in sports. Like, I know everyone that's hiring always asks the same question. Well, why do you want to work in sports? 9 out of 10 candidates are going to answer it the same way. I'm going to hire the candidate that answers it differently, because I know, to what I typed out earlier, they're going to be curious. They're going to be coachable. They're going to have natural intention as well as being empathetic. People will train you on how to sell. People will train you on how to leave a good voicemail or have great outreach. Like, if you bring your tangible skills to the table, whomever your mentor may be, whoever my mentor was, like, leave that to them. So coming into the industry, it's almost better if you don't really know a lot, because again, you become super coachable, as opposed to walking in the front door day one at the LA Rams being like, I'm a Rams fan from Los Angeles. I know exactly how to sell. I know exactly what to say and what not to say on the phone. Like, you're going to get proven pretty quickly that you don't know anything. So be an open book. And like I mentioned, it's all about your coachability and the intention behind empathy and what you've got coming into it. So I hope that answered most of those questions, because I think it's super important, especially if anyone on this call, like yourself, Jacob, wants to start within a team on the sales side, because it can get pretty crazy and it is always high volume.
Yeah, and just to add to Ryan's point from a league side too, it's very similar, applicable, transferable skills, you know, as it relates to sales, but going into it, thinking about building relationships. So it's sometimes a long game as it relates to stuff actually coming to fruition, but never burn a bridge. Just continue to, you know, facilitate those relationships, because I've been with MLB for 9 years now. Stuff that I worked on years and years ago, those relationships come back around. And then there are opportunities that you guys can work together and provide mutual benefit. So, come into it ready to build relationships that you'll keep for many, many years to come.
Great stuff. Well, students, thank you for those questions, and panelists, thank you for addressing those questions as well as the questions in the panel. I appreciate the activity and all the insights you're providing in the chat as well. So we're getting near time, so I want to give our panelists a chance to be able to wrap things up with some parting words of advice. And we covered some good things, but there's plenty on the table that we haven't touched on. So anything that you feel that we haven't touched on that students absolutely should know to break into sports and to maintain success, feel free to leave us with that. So let's start with Nadia. So Nadia, any parting words of advice?
Yeah, so I saw something actually come in through the chat that was really interesting to me. As someone who didn't necessarily, I'm from Hawaii. I didn't grow up watching sports per se. I didn't have a professional team. Ryan had a really good point about be malleable, right? Like be the person. When I went to the NFL, I didn't know what the 32 teams were. And I ended up there for 4 years. So be the person who you have the skills, right? Like I'd come from law. I was working as a marketing assistant at a law firm when I had my first job at AEG. And, you'd think it's not a one-to-one change. Often when I kind of am in the sports role, there's this kind of imposter syndrome that happens where you're just like, I feel like I'm behind. I feel like I'm not doing X, Y, Z. I feel like I didn't work here. I feel like I didn't network with this person. I feel like my title's not here and there. It's really easy to kind of get in your own head about these things, but just be confident in yourself. Know right? Like no sports, right? That's kind of the very bare bones kind of thing that you need to know to get into this industry, but really just be confident in yourself. If you're a good salesperson, you know how to speak. There's no saying that just because you didn't have XYZ internship, you didn't go to XYZ school, you can't make it work. There was a really great point about how it's sometimes tough to find the ability to live in an expensive city like San Francisco and Los Angeles. I 100% relate to that as someone who, went through those struggles, especially as a student. It doesn't really matter where you are compared to everyone else. It's all about your own experience, what you make of it, your own networking skills, your own ability to believe in yourself, know kind of what the business is, and just getting from that point and kind of having that vision, things will happen for you, right? It's a really tough industry. I won't kind of beat around the bush about that. There's a lot of people who want to get into it. Not everyone is quite so successful about that, but it's not really about those sorts of success metrics. And it can be really easy to get in your own head and just to kind of be confident in yourself. Don't let these things sort of get you down. Reach out to all of us after this, and we will do the best of our ability to help you out.
Thank you, Nadia. Much appreciated. And Joey, how about you? Any parting words of advice for students?
Yeah, I think especially early on, saying yes, and then figuring it out. I think that a lot of opportunities come when you're a new employee, and taking things on, even if it's a huge new challenge that you don't really understand how to get to the final product, is a big thing. And once you're there, take guidance. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I think it took me a while to really figure out my strengths when I came out of college. And going back to the original question, one of the questions earlier, majors do not matter. I was an agricultural business major, writing papers on cherries, and now I work for the National Football League. So really don't let that hinder you. A few other things, doing the little things well. So I think a lot of times when you come into the workforce, you want to just hit the ground running. You want to take on the biggest of the biggest. You want to do, and that's a really great mindset to have. It's really important to be a self-starter in that regard, but really making sure that you're doing the little things well. I can't tell you how many times I hire somebody. Most of the time they do the little things well, but when they don't, it's incredibly noticeable. I'll never forget when I first started at the league. I've been there for about 9 years as well. And I remember I was complimented on how I was putting together emails, like my writing style, my email. And I just remember being like, what? Like, that's crazy. Like, to me, that was like a no-brainer. Like, but then the further I got in, like, I realized like people are impatient. People don't communicate. Like, a lot of times the little things get either misinterpreted or overlooked. And so I think, especially as you're entering the workforce, do those little things well, like check those boxes, and then look towards the bigger things, because you can't, if you don't have that solid foundation of really understanding how to do the basics, then you're gonna have a really hard time progressing. So those were just a few that jumped out to me.
Thank you, Joey. Appreciate it. And Annie, how about you? Any parting words of advice?
Yeah, do the little things right, as in like just even in the interviewing process or when you're first meeting people, don't take the interview in the car. Be in a good area, have good internet, have good appearance, right? Don't be wearing a t-shirt with a slogan on it. Be wearing a look professional when you're doing an interview. There's nothing that'll turn me off more than someone who just doesn't look like they care. If you don't care in the interview process, then you're not going to care in the job. So come how you want to be perceived, because it is a first impression. And then you don't need to know everything. When I was becoming a manager, I had never made a budget. Like I had to balance my checkbook, make sure I paid bills. I had never done a budget. And so that was something that I was very honest about in my interview. Is there anything that scares you about this position? I said, yeah, I've never made a budget. So, there's a lot that excites me about this, but I don't know how to do that. I'm going to be quite honest with you. That's something you're going to have to teach me. So you're not going to know everything and know that going in, and just be willing to learn and be an open book and take on those opportunities. And then relationships, make those relationships, try and befriend everyone in your organization. You never know when you're going to need something from them. But that's not even why to do it. Just be a good teammate, because ultimately that's what makes us better and makes us stronger. And I think that's just the way it should be in life is, those relationships are huge. And, it means a lot when, people leave our organization, because we are a stepping stone. We know that. And they go, you are so nice. We're always so helpful. You're always so welcoming. And I think that's truly important, and it'll take you far in life. So even if it just makes you feel good, it will take you far. And just remember, it's never how you start, it's how you finish.
Terrific.
One more small thing that I wish
Sure,
someone
Joey.
told me. If you're interested in sports media, learn about sports media. Subscribe to newsletters, Axios Sports, Front Office Sports, #sports. They're daily emails, daily or weekly or monthly emails that you can get straight to your email. I start the morning every day, whether it's 5 minutes or 30 minutes, depending on my schedule, and I learn about what's going on. If you go into an interview and understand even just the basics of what's going on, incredibly impressive. So do stuff like that. It's really easy, it's free, and it's really valuable.
Thank you, Joey. If you don't mind, feel free to drop some of those recommendations in the chat as well. Next, let's see. I had someone else in mind. Sergio. Is Sergio still with us?
Hey guys, yes, I am. Sorry, I just had a coughing attack there.
Oh.
But yeah, I'll just touch on what Joey said or what he alluded to at the end there. Right, I meet with a lot of folks that are in school that think that when school ends, that their learning kind of stops there. Right, that's when it really begins. The fact of the matter is, you're going to learn a lot on the job, but the people who put the time into into learning after work, right, reading the trades, learning about the trends, right, really putting work and learning just what best practices are and what the top performers in their industry are doing, those are the people that really ultimately succeed. So back to your initial question, Ron, when you asked, one of the 1 or 2 most important lessons that I've learned, it's just the importance of continued growth, right? And continued growth and continued learning. All the best executives that I know, all of my mentors, right, they've really instilled it upon me that, in order to continue to grow and be the best version of yourself, you have to be passionate about learning, right? So for all of you guys listening, just figure out how to develop a habit of, putting time outside of work or school into continued growth, because those are really going to be some of the things that are differentiators for you.
Thank you, Sergio. Sergio reminded me, I can't remember what it was, but I think it may have been something you contributed to a document I created, a sports career document. But I know you read some insane number of books. It was like a few years ago, and I can't remember if you mentioned it on the panel, if you mentioned, but I was just blown away. And so, yeah, so Sergio is definitely walking his talk. He's definitely a big believer and really a proponent of continued growth. So, yeah, so thank you for reminding us about that. Next, I wanted to ask Lauren if Lauren had any parting words of advice.
Yeah, as you guys are coming out of all this great information today and starting to reach out to panelists and connecting with other people in the industry, make sure you're doing your homework as it relates to their backgrounds. If they're taking, 15, 20 minutes out of their day to meet with you, come prepared with questions. It not only sets a good precedent and gives you a really good, reputation of someone who, is really going to be a hard worker, but it also maximizes your time with them. If it's stuff that's already on their LinkedIn profile or in one of the bios you can find online, that's time you're wasting with them that you could really be honing in on valuable advice that would be specific to your career. So do your homework. The homework I know is probably not what you guys are hoping to get after you're finishing school, but it doesn't stop. Even for all of us here on the panel, we're all doing our homework in various ways every day.
All right, thank you, Lauren. I love that. Next, Ryan, how about you?
Just because I know we've beaten the what we can do, homework, stay up to date on everything you can, knowledge to a bloody pulp in these last 5 minutes, which is great because it is the best way to go forward from any one of these conferences. I would say having some personal experience in this, having gone from one coast to the other in my career, the one thing I hang my hat on is always having the want to try new things in this industry. It's amazing how 2 or 3 skills you learn at one stop along the journey can end up coming back. I think Lauren said it earlier, it can come back 5 to 6 years later, whether it's a relationship or it could be a best practice, a business tactic that worked in one market to where maybe, hey, let's implement this out here. And I think that all kind of stems upward to be yourself. You're already putting yourself ahead of everyone else by being here on a Friday afternoon. So I know all of us look forward to seeing a bunch of LinkedIn messages and times to chat. Like, I know it says it on my page and I'm sure it does for others here, but like, we can be, if you want us to be, again, I'll say that we can be, if you want us to be, your internal heroes when you get closer to being in a final round interview or having the opportunity to work at X organization. Like, Annie may message me and be like, hey, Ryan, I saw that you're connected with this person and we have an interview with them tomorrow. Like, that's how our sports world works, as well as sports media. Like, if there's connections that you have and you're interviewing that person, they may reach out to any one of us and be like, hey, how do you know this person? If it's just from here, that's great, because I can tell them, hey, they're passionate, they care about it because they've shown up to events like this when it wasn't required for them to be here. So I would leave you all with those 2 quick pieces of advice.
Thank you, Ryan. And then Celeste, let's bring us home. You've parting with advice.
Well, I loved what Ryan said, because I was actually texting with Ken Rosenthal this morning, who's a talent for, baseball, Fox Sports. And one of the things is we were talking about someone who I had, I put him in touch with, and he's like, wow, this guy's a hustler. And he goes, you don't really see that much in this world anymore. You don't really see that much in the world anymore. And, we were texting back and forth. So I was like, 1, be a hustler. 2, please and thank you go a long way. Like, when I went over to Egypt, I learned that the Egyptians really believed that please and thank you were magical words. And I think they're onto something there, because I think when you say thank you, like I'm, looking at the chat and all of you students that are saying thank you, when you're appreciating Ron's hard work with this, you're appreciating all the people that are on the panel today and the time that they're giving to you, just that thank you goes a long way. And I think people want to help you more when you're very appreciative of their time and energy. And then the last thing I'll say is, this is your journey, right? And I think if you're driven and you want to know kind of like what you want to do with your life, or you're just like, hey, I have potential, I want to see what I can do with my life, your responsibility is yours. It's nobody else's, right? So one of the things that really changed my life when I wrote my book was this woman taught me to just set a timer and focus. So it's so easy to get distracted with social media and other things, family, all that kind of stuff. But setting the timer for 30 minutes a day and focusing on one task or a couple of tasks really helped me. Like, every single Sunday, still to this day, 30 minutes, I set the timer and I get on LinkedIn and I just start connecting with people. And it's not this whole pitch. It's not this whole like, hey, here's my life story. It's like, hey, want to connect. right? And it leads to some great conversations. So just don't think it out so much, right? Just focus for 30 minutes and keep connecting and keep networking with people.
Great stuff. Great way to end it. And so much good stuff you all shared. And obviously you all did not disappoint. And so just a quick recap and we'll wrap up. But, be malleable, be confident in yourself, saying yes to things and figuring out, not be afraid to ask questions, doing the little things and doing the little things well. Not needing to know everything, being an open book. Relationships are key. You hear a lot about that. They can't say enough about that. I'm sorry, my notes. So I guess that was causing my notes too. But learning doesn't stop, when you finish school. So continuing to read the trades, understanding the trends, doing your homework. So even though, as Lauren mentioned, homework is the last thing you want to hear, but doing your homework on the industry and people that you want to reach out to, being prepared, and that does go a long ways, folks, because people can tell by the questions you ask whether you're prepared or not. Having the want to do new things, being yourself, and we talked earlier about being your authentic self, and then being a hustler, getting out there, making it happen. And please and thank you. And so that's just so funny because earlier in the day, someone talked about kindness and being nice. And I love things like that, things that we take for granted and things that people struggle with too. But yet saying please and thank you doesn't cost you anything to thank somebody and just to say please when you're ever request. And just owning and understanding this is your journey, owning it too. So folks, thank you again. So Annie, Celeste, Joy, Lauren, Nadia, Ryan, and Sergio, thank you so much. And I have to thank you all probably more so the other panelists because it's late on Friday and you're here and you knew it was going to be late on the Friday and you still decided to show up. So thank you for the time that you invested. Thank you for your words of wisdom and thank you for your continued support of this kind of work. As you know, and as I've said before, it really does make a difference. None of the students are a lot better because of this information you shared. And also for knowing and being reminded that there are people like you in the industry who are successful, who've done a lot, but that you really do want to help. And that's gonna make it easier for them to reach out as well. So thank you all, be well, and I definitely look forward to being in touch again very soon.